Hello everyone, and welcome back to Soccer Unboxing. So welcome to another figure review. I am a little bit decked out, I feel, for this video, but unfortunately I couldn't find any clothing that sort of matches some items in the figure or just the vibe of the figure, I feel. So I just kind of had this outfit put together just to kind of match the type of character that this is. I'll probably explain a little bit more once I reveal the figure, but yeah, I'm very excited for this one. It's by a pretty popular figure manufacturer, and it's one that's quite expensive, but you know, I caved because I really loved the overall design and composition for the figure, so yes. Without further ado, let us get on to the figure reveal. So yes, here is the figure right here, and it's actually the first Touhou figure in my collection. So this is the touhouproject Flandre Scarlet complete figure by Alter. So I'm not sure about the scaling at the time I pre-ordered this, but on my figure collection this is actually a 1/8, and I believe it does say, yeah, it does say on the box that this is a 1/8, so that's pretty nice. And you know, box is actually not as big as I thought it would be, considering just looking at this figure, you know, how grand she looks. But yes, I'm very excited for this one because Alter is a pretty popular figure manufacturer, and I feel like they do a fantastic job with their figures overall. So also why I'm kind of dressed like this is, you know, I kind of wanted to picture myself how I would probably look if I were a creature of the night, let us say. So yeah, you know, the black earrings, the choker. That's just my vibe if I were kind of like a sort of vampire, I guess. So yeah, but I'm very excited for this one. So far, looking into the box, she does look fantastic overall. And the box itself is also very nice. Of course, I'll show some more B-roll. But yeah, I'd say, you know, the size, I'm surprised it is what it is. I thought it was, again, going to be quite big, but thankfully it's not. So yes, now let us move on, of course, to the general information about this figure. So now we're moving on to some general information for this figure. So this figure is manufactured by Alter, and originally she was supposed to have a May 2023 release, but got delayed a month to June of 2023. So for the dimensions of this figure, she is a 1/8 scale, measuring at roughly 9.75 inches tall. Now we're moving on to where I bought this figure from. So I bought her off of AmiAmi, and on there she is not discounted. So she was 34,980 yen, or the equivalent to $237.42 USD. Definitely very pricey on there. Probably would have been best to find her somewhere else for a cheaper price. So now we're moving on to the shipping costs for the figure. So I did combine this figure with several other figures, and thankfully someone on my figure collection had a comment saying the estimated prices to the United States. So EMS was 8,620 yen, DHL was 8,472 yen, air parcel was 7,450 yen, surface parcel was 3,510 yen, and surface mail premium was 4,914 yen. So now we're moving on to AmiAmi box size. Now these are some rough estimates as to what box that this figure could fit in. Now there wasn't any, like, you know, AmiAmi box size on my figure collection page for this figure. So I did some kind of calculating to think, okay, what AmiAmi box would fit her the best. So for reference, the Flandre box, these are just rough estimates. The length of the box is 11 inches, the width of the box is 9 inches, and the height is around 13 inches. So now I'm kind of going to go into what AmiAmi size box that she might be able to fit in. Again, I'm just going off some measurements that I made on some of the AmiAmi boxes I have on hand. Maybe someone on YouTube unboxed her from AmiAmi and that had the box size on there, but I didn't bother to look. So these are just sort of my theoretical sort of estimates and thoughts of what size box this figure would fit into. So we're going to start off with the Ami Ami size 120 box, which measures 12 inches in width, 17 inches in length, and 12 inches in height. It's overall a very tight fitted box. I do have some pictures showing up on screen with her inside an Ami Ami size 120 box. Definitely a very tight fit overall, but I feel like it's not impossible to ship her in this box overall. They're just really gonna have to pad it out. So now we're moving on to the other box that I think she might have come in, and that is the Ami Ami size 140 box, which measures 14.5 inches in width, 21 inches in length, and 12 inches in height. So with this box, there is definitely a lot more room, but I feel like it's a little bit of a waste, especially if you get this figure by itself. You could probably throw in some merch or maybe an Android in the 140 box along with the Flandre Scarlet figure. But if you just get the figure by herself, I definitely recommend, if you do get her off of Ami Ami, of course, emailing them saying that you'd like to maybe go from a 140 to a 120 box, or just, you know, go to a lower box size in general. So yeah, pretty much, unless someone verifies me in the comments, if she does come in either a 140 or 120 box by herself, those are just some of my observations comparing her box size to the 120 and 140 box size. So, you know, that just helps give you an idea of like how, you know, big this figure box is and how well it can fit in, you know, these two kinds of Ami Ami box sizes. So yes, here she is. Again, I feel like not that big from especially where I'm standing, which is good. So yeah, obviously I was very much anticipating this figure. I think she got delayed by a month, but now she's here and I'm very excited to unbox her. And yeah, so without further ado, I'll get to taking her out of the packaging. So, starting off, I just realized how long these instructions are, and yeah, already taking her out of the packaging, like, I saw her wings and all of the crystals look very beautiful so far. And yeah, there's definitely going to be a lot to work with this figure. I'm a little bit nervous because it's also in Japanese, so, you know, I don't know what I'm going to be doing, so hopefully it's an alright process to put this figure together. So yeah, now I will of course free her from her packaging. So now I got her out of the packaging and we'll be starting off with the base itself, which is, you know, has roses on it. It has like a slab of like ground and it's kind of like on a pedestal. So that's pretty much like the first step you have to do, is you actually have to attach the figure itself on the base, which is good. So yeah, I'll see how I can like rearrange this a little bit because it is a little bit messy, so. So now we're moving on to Flandre herself, and so far I'm looking at her and she looks fantastic. I really love the face, the glossy eyes, she has her fangs sculpted in, and you know, by default she is holding the apple. And yeah, it's so gorgeous. Yeah, she is very small, again, 1/8. But yeah, I'm very impressed with the details and the coloring so far on her. So she does have a metal rod, which I think is nice. So that's just gonna go into the base. So let's see how easy this goes in. And yeah, so here she is so far on the base. It's the metal rod slid in very well. Wasn't too tight of a fit, wasn't too loose. And yeah, so far looking pretty good. After that, it says we are going to have to attach her wings, I believe. So actually before I get into that, she does have an alternate arm part, which I think is a neat touch. So this, I believe, replaces like the arm with the apple in it. So, you know, I'll have that to decide later. I'm not too sure exactly what this is. Again, I haven't actually played a lot of the Touhou games or seen anything Touhou related too much. I mean, I actually have played the sort of Touhou Castlevania game way back when. So there's that, but I haven't actually, you know, delving into the series. Also, actually, there's another arm as well, so you can actually kind of like mix and match these a little bit, which I think is nice. I think you can. You can interchange the arms in different ways. So yeah, this one is just like she's kind of just pointing. So yeah, we'll see how that is later on the figure. So the next couple of steps were actually obviously showing how to sort of interchange the arm parts. I'm gonna skip that for right now and just kind of assemble the rest of this figure. So the next step we have is actually to put in her wings, which I actually still have to take out the plastic, or the blister. I thought I actually took them out, but I guess not. So. Okay, now I finally got that out. We have her wings right here with all these various crystals, and it looks absolutely beautiful. I love the translucentness and just like colors of these, and I feel like they have like, you know, variation to each of them. Like I do notice some like gradient to each of these, which I think is fantastic. I'm not too sure which one goes in which. But yeah, so she has like 2 pegs on her back, which you just kind of slide these into. Okay, so I put the wings in. The one right here on this side, a little bit of a tight fit, but not too bad. But this one was quite tricky. I don't think it's even in all the way, but I'm not going to honestly put it in all the way because it's going to be a pain in the butt to probably get out later. So you do kind of have to like bob and weave a little bit with this figure. So yeah, you know, definitely take your time, and I'd say definitely be careful with this part of assembling the figure. Because again, you could possibly break off the individual like jewel pieces on the wing, and it's just kind of hard because I literally had to like push on her front and then push the wing in, and you know, just be careful that you're not too high up that you actually hit her hand. I probably like push against her torso, you know, that way to make things easier, but so far it looks gorgeous. I mean, I haven't seen her from the front, so I'm not too sure. After that, there's also an additional little piece right here. Yes, we actually have an additional little extra wing piece. So yeah, there's this like extra piece. I guess they removed it so, you know, it wouldn't hit anything. And it's supposed to go on the right side. Okay, pretty simple to put that little piece in. It just goes straight into the back. And yeah, I guess, you know, they just removed it so it would be easier to put this wing in. You know, maybe with this figure, I kind of wish that maybe they just gave all of the wing pieces like individually. Maybe just to make it a little bit easier so you don't accidentally like break it off while putting this all together. Granted, you know, there is a whole bunch of them, and, you know, it might be kind of confusing to see which piece goes where, but, you know, I'd say maybe that would be, you know, I wouldn't actually mind doing it if it was easy to put this like little extra piece into the wing as it was, you know, just so I don't end up breaking anything in the long run. And lastly, we have, of course, the stained glass background, which is in bubble wrap. And yeah, kind of a nice gradient. I do think the pattern is quite interesting. So yeah, that should just easily, okay. Yeah, it should just slide in quite easy to the back. And yeah, so that was actually quite easy to put in. It thankfully doesn't like rub up against any of the pieces in the back, which is a nice touch, and it does kind of like go in at an angle just the way they molded the peg. But yeah, overall, I guess here she is assembled. There is a couple of like other instructions to this, and it's mostly having to do with the interchangeable parts. So like the way you have to put in that extra crystal if you do have the other right hand plugged in. But yeah, so overall assembly, it actually wasn't too bad. I was kind of dreading it a little bit. This is not the same level of pain in the butt assembly as I'd say Hokusai, because I feel like with that figure it was very hard to just get things into place and just having it kind of, you know, all blend in together. This one is actually, you know, pretty not that bad. Again, I was intimidated just because of the overall composition and sculpt of the figure. I'd say definitely kind of the trickiest part is definitely putting in the wings, just because you kind of have to make sure you don't, you know, when you push things together, you don't accidentally like put too much pressure on one thing and snap it off. And yeah, for a 1/8, this is pretty grand, I'd say. And I guess if you kind of want to save room, you could remove her wings, but my god, it's a beautiful figure by Alter so far from what I'm seeing. And yeah, even though I haven't played this game, I do like the character designs. Again, you know, there was like the Yomu Konpaku by Good Smile that I originally pre-ordered. That would have been my first Toho figure, but I canceled it just because I felt like I fell out of love with it. But this figure, I am absolutely loving her vibe and just how it's looking so far. I don't notice anything off. Again, Alter, I feel like they do an excellent job with their figures in terms of paintwork and sculpting. And this one, at the moment, as I'm just glancing at her, is no exception. And yeah, absolutely grand for a 1/8. So of course, Alter is making the Flandre Scarlet figure to kind of match the Flandre. I'm very excited for that one. It is still a prototype at the moment, and you know, I don't know when that's gonna ever release, but I am most likely gonna order her just to kind of go with Flandre. I think they look excellent together. And yeah, overall, I think she looks fantastic. So yes, now of course I'll get into the B-roll with the showing off the box, assembling this figure once again, and you know, my overall thoughts and such. So now moving on to some b-roll for the box, and I overall really like the design of it. I like the red that was chosen for it. I like the font that was used in various places. I do like how, of course, it comes with the original artwork on the side of the box, as well as just the design of the clear parts. Like you have a sort of stained glass window design and this very gorgeous like rose pattern on there. It's just an overall very well done, high quality box, nice and sturdy as well. And in my opinion, not too big. I thought this was going to be a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be due to just the way that this figure looks in general. But I feel like it's a pretty decent size box overall. It's not overly big that it's a waste of material, but it's not too small that it won't provide enough protective packaging. So yeah, overall, a very nicely designed box by Alter. So now we're moving on to the assembly for this figure, which honestly wasn't too difficult as I thought it was, at least by default without having to exchange any of the alternate arm parts. But yeah, we'll get to that much later in the video, but starting off we have this lovely pedestal vase with these lovely roses on them. Really like the shading on the leaves and the vines. I do kind of wish that the roses actually had a little bit more shading. I feel like they're just one flat color of red. A little bit of a darker red would have been very nice. And then moving on to Flandre herself, she is absolutely gorgeous. I really love, again, the sculpt is fantastic. An excellent translation of that original illustration of her into figure form. She just looks so cute and mischievous overall, and I love her so much. She's so good looking overall. So yeah, she's fantastic, this main centerpiece for the figure. And yeah, has a metal peg at the bottom that you just slot into the base. I made this look way harder than it should because granted, I couldn't really see. You know, I want to kind of capture this on camera again, but it's not that tight of a fit. I feel like it's like, yeah, a perfect fit overall, and it just plugs in like that. Next up, we have these holes in her back for these gorgeous wings. I love these so much. I really like, you know, the main sort of branch-like part. I do like the overall shading to it. The darker browns add a nice, you know, depth to it. And then you have all these gorgeous, like, jewel-like pieces of the wings. I really like the coloring on them, the gradation in the colors. They're just so fantastic. And these do come already pre-attached to the wings, and thankfully, I feel like they're pretty secure on there overall. I didn't see anything about people saying, oh, one of these pieces popped up in transit. Granted, there is one piece that is missing that you have to put in at the end. You do have like a separate sort of jewel-like piece that you have to plug in at, you know, the very tail end of assembling this figure. And then it's all about inserting these into the back. Now, this left wing gave me a little bit of trouble. I feel like it wasn't super duper in all the way flush to the figure, so I had to kind of push against her torso and then push the opposite direction just to get those in. The right wing was definitely a lot better, not too bad overall. And yeah, so the wings, you know, surprisingly not too much of a pain in the butt to put in, which I think is nice. And then, yeah, so I'm just showing you how I, you know, managed to get her left wing a little bit more in there. So yeah, just pushing one way versus the other. Now we're moving on to the stained glass window. Really love the colors that were chosen for this, and the design on the top looks very nice, and it's definitely one you kind of have to be careful with. You don't want to drop this on the floor because I feel like it would just break into a million pieces and be impossible to put back together. So yeah, it's definitely a little bit fragile up there. And then you simply just slot this into the back of the figure. The stained glass is tilted at an angle when displayed, and this peg kind of goes just straight down. And, you know, it's pretty nice tight fit overall. You just kind of use some elbow grease towards the end. And then we have this lone sort of jewel piece right here that I feel like they packaged separately just because it kind of gets in the way of a couple of things. But that just slots in right here, and it's a nice solid fit overall. So that's pretty much Flandre's like default look out of the box completed. And now we're going to be moving on to the optional display pieces, which is this one right here with this weird piece. I don't know what the heck this sort of brown piece is called in the game, but it's very nice shading overall, and I do like that clean transition from the brown to the red. And then we have this alternate hand with this sort of dainty hand expression. My camera didn't quite focus too well on this, but very nice sculpt work again overall. Now, first things first, to get these on, you have to remove Flandre's head, Again, I take my time with this so I don't use too much force and the head goes flying. The last thing I want to do is break that head. And then removing the hand parts. Not too bad overall, but then I use some toilet paper to kind of, you know, protect the hand from not getting scratched, and then paint transfer, especially against the red dress. And then again, putting that toilet paper back on for protection. Now this arm didn't quite go in all the way. As you can kind of tell, it wants to kind of pop out a little bit, which is unfortunate. I think the peg was just a smidge too big overall for that side. And this side right here is definitely a lot more of a seamless insert. And then simply putting her head back on now. Definitely be careful again. You can tell at some points I kind of, yeah, the hand kind of moves a little bit because the head hits it. So definitely be careful. Again, I just want to prevent as much paint transfer as possible. And then putting the wings in, again, left wing, you know, needs a little bit of force. But then this side is definitely when you have to bob and weave a little bit. I feel like it might have been easier. I didn't exactly try this to put the wings in first, then the arm, and then Flandre's head. Because yeah, I feel like you could accidentally rub and then, you know, paint comes off. And then also the little gem piece goes in here. Again, have to bob and weave my hands a little bit. And then, yeah, that's how this whole mess kind of looks. It's pretty much the trickiest part of putting this figure together if you want to display it with those other parts. And then putting the stained glass in, again, that sort of part for that alternate hand kind of rubs up against the stained glass, so I put that toilet paper there for protection. And there is Flandre's alternate look assembled, and it looks very cool overall. So now we're moving on to B-roll for the figure, and this is an absolutely gorgeous, stunning, top-tier altar figure, in my opinion at least. I think they did a fantastic job translating the original Flandre illustration into figure form, and this is definitely, I feel like, probably the best Flandre figure out there. Granted, it is, you know, a 200 plus figure, and I can kind of see why. You know, before I thought, oh, this is quite expensive, you know, especially for a 1/8, but, you know, they definitely poured their heart out into the details, the sculpt, and, you know, of course, the different materials. That kind of adds up. And, you know, speaking of those different materials, I love the translucentness to them. I like, of course, you know, the gold paint. I like my little shiny metallic details. And the paintwork is pretty much clean overall. I really didn't notice anything that was too awful or like, you know, paint bleeding or anything. There were some areas that were kind of my fault because I bumped them a little bit, but yeah. And yeah, Flandre's face is just fantastic. Her hair is gorgeous. I love that shading that they put onto that. And yeah, in general, this figure just has so much like depth and dimension to it, and it's just definitely one of my top figures I have to say for 2023. Alter definitely nailed this figure overall. So yeah, speaking of some little mishaps, definitely be careful with the ends of this figure or anything like pointy, such as maybe, you know, the tips of her little jewel wings. Definitely be careful with the ends of those, and her heel. Unfortunately, I think I just bumped it up against something and the paint kind of came off a little bit at the tip. I mean, thankfully I can just probably patch it up with a little bit of gold, but it kind of dented a little bit. So that's just something to be careful with when, you know, you're moving this figure around. The other thing I noticed when I was assembling this figure as well is that this part of the pane of the stained glass window kind of came up a little bit. The other side is, I think, glued down, so I don't want to attempt to glue that down and just make a mess of it, so I'll just leave it as is. It's not too bad overall. And then here she is with the alternate display part. But yeah, it's a pretty cool piece overall. Again, the shading is gorgeous on it. Definitely a little bit more tricky to put on than her default hands, just because you kind of gotta bob and weave. And you can, of course, mix and match these, which I think is a nice touch as well. I like to have, like, you know, variety in how you can display their figures. So yes, overall, a top tier and gorgeous Flandre Scarlet figure overall. Now we're moving on to some size comparisons. So here is the 1/8 Flandre Scarlet figure by Alter next to the Nendoroid Hatsune Miku 15th anniversary figure. Next we have the 1/8 Luca Hanehiro Goromo figure by Stronger. After that we have a 1/7 figure, which is the Miyako Ayatsu no Jikan Nano version by Ribos. After that, we're moving on to a 1/6 figure, which is the Mauve figure by Native and Rocket Boy. And lastly, of course, we have a massive 1/4 figure, which is the Hatsune Miku My Dear Bunny version by Fang. So now moving on to my overall thoughts for this figure, and I'm absolutely blown away by how this figure came out. Again, Alter, I feel like they're definitely the creme de la creme of figure manufacturers. I feel like they're a good majority of the time a hit, and this figure is absolutely no exception. So this is overall an excellent translation of the original illustration into figure form. The sculpt is absolutely fantastic, and I really love all the details, such as the wrinkles on her dress and just all the little outfit details, and even on her hat and such. Just everything is sculpted so well. Again, every time I see an Alter prototype, not even painted, I think, their sculpts look so fantastic overall. And overall, I have to say by default, the assembly wasn't too bad as I thought it was going to be. This isn't on the level of Good Smile's Saber Hokusai figure, which was kind of a nightmare to put together. This one was actually surprisingly not too bad for how many different pieces it comes with. It was overall a pretty smooth assembly process. And overall, I think the pose for Flandre is super nice. It's very mischievous, it's very cute, and I just love the way it's sculpted once again overall. And lastly, again, Alter's paintwork is beautiful. I really love the colors. The gold is painted very nicely. Really didn't notice any like paint bleeding and such, or paint mishaps, which is, a plus. And there's also such nice shading overall to the figure for the most part. I feel like the roses are definitely the one area that kind of lacks some shading. Would have liked, again, maybe see a darker red in the crevices of the petals, but other than that, I feel like the rest of the figure has such very nice shading overall, and it definitely gives the figure more depth and dimension. Now moving on to some cons, so the first one is you definitely want to watch the pointy parts of the figure. Again, I accidentally bumped her front heel that sticks out the most. I forgot where I bumped it on, but I feel like it wasn't that hard, and when I did, it kind of chipped the paint off a little bit. It kind of made a dent. Again, that point of the heel was very pointy, and it just kind of flattened it a little bit, so definitely be careful on some of the pointier parts of the figure. You don't want to end up bumping it into other parts and chipping off the paint. And overall, I do have to say, while the assembly process wasn't too bad, maybe putting in the second arm, the one with her weapon, along with putting in the wing once again, was kind of tricky. Again, you have to pretty much bob and weave, and definitely recommend using protective packaging just in case, so you don't end up scraping the paint off. So apparently also that weapon that she holds is supposed to be a crooked clock hand, I believe. And according to the Touhou wiki, it's supposed to be possibly the weapon Levitain, which is from, I believe, Norse mythology. Again, any massive Touhou fans who have better knowledge than I do, definitely clarify in the comments if that's the case for that weapon that she's holding. Also, with that arm that holds that weapon, it doesn't quite, again, go in flush to the figure. I think the peg is just a little bit too large, which is quite unfortunate. So now we're moving on to the last part, which is the price for the figure. I feel like I've just mixed thoughts on it. On the one hand, when I first pre-ordered this, I'm like, oh my god, that's really expensive. Way back when, probably I think last year was when I pre-ordered this figure. It's been such a long time, but looking at it now, I can feel like it's an okay price overall. Again, just the level of detail that Alter puts into their figures, I feel like this one, definitely kind of warrant the price raise. And additionally, you have the different materials, like the clear, translucent pieces. So yeah, if you can get this figure for much cheaper in the aftermarket, then that's great. It's definitely quite a pricey figure overall, but I can kind of see where it kind of comes from. Again, I am no expert on, how companies should price their figures. This is just kind of my observations from having the figure in hand. So now we're moving on to aftermarket prices, and as far as I can see on places like Yahoo Japan auctions and such, she has gone up. So I'm seeing one of them on here for 350 USD, which is crazy. That's like 100 plus USD to this figure. The one thing underneath it is a display case, so that really doesn't count. And then Yahoo Japan Shopping actually has her for a little bit more, probably like 10 USD more than retail price, so $248. And then Mercari JP, the cheapest one, is 276 USD, and the rest kind of go for, you know, 300 plus, except for the one at the end for 40,000 yen. Again, you know, this figure has like shot up, it seems like significantly. Again, I'm doing this review kind of in September, so, you know, that figure released in June, so, you know, maybe it was cheaper like back then, but now it seems like the figure has like significantly gone up in price. So I did find one on Mandarake, granted it is sold out, so congrats to the lucky person who got that for roughly under 200 USD. That, you know, is a pretty good steal overall. And unfortunately on my figure collection I didn't really see anyone who was selling the figure overall, so unfortunately you don't have that as an option. And I guess as a last resort, there is eBay, but you're looking at like 350 plus USD for this figure, so definitely avoid eBay. It's a last resort. I would definitely say probably wait for this figure, keep an eye on it. You know, see if it goes down in the future. I really wouldn't recommend paying like, you know, 300 plus USD for this figure. That's just way too much. So yes, from what I saw on a couple of websites, again, if anyone has other websites that she might be on that's cheaper, definitely let me know in the comments. I tend to go to these sort of go-to websites when looking at aftermarket prices. But if you do want this figure, she is surprisingly still on AmiAmi for retail price. If you don't mind chucking her on a boat and waiting, that's the best bang for your buck, unless you want to pay that, you know, 8,000 yen for shipping. But yeah, if you don't mind waiting, then that's a not so bad deal overall. So yes, those were the aftermarket prices that I've seen. Again, I really delayed this video, so maybe it was a lot cheaper back then, but currently as of the month of September, it seems like her price has gone up significantly. So yeah, definitely keep an eye out for this figure. You know, if you don't want to pay those high prices, definitely I would wait a bit. Maybe she'll go down in the aftermarket eventually. But yes, I overall do hope that this review does help you in your decision on whether or not you want to buy this figure. So yes, we're at the end of the video now, and now I'm going to go into my usual outro. So yes, I have the figure in hand. Pretty light actually, which is nice. I can hold her with one hand with ease. But yeah, also a little bit jiggly with the wings, but I absolutely love this figure. I do think Alter did a fantastic job, and I feel like the delay was worth the wait just to make sure that this figure is top notch, and they once again delivered. And yeah, so very gorgeous. I'm at a loss for words. It's, you know, fantastic. Just overall composition and design of this figure I think is excellent. So yes, very happy I added this figure to my collection. You know, quite an expensive purchase overall, considering, you know, that this is a 1/8. Maybe it could have been a smidge less than it was, but yeah, hopefully you guys can find this figure for a, you know, probably much better price than what I paid for, pre-owned or aftermarket wise. But yeah, overall I'm very excited to have, of course, this gorgeous vampire in my collection. So that overall concludes this video. I do hope that this figure review helped to anyone who was interested in picking up this figure, and yeah, so thank you all so much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you all have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or night wherever you are, and take it easy. Goodbye!